Welcome to Clock Tower. I'm Brandon, and we're looking at Arifuerta today. So this is being recorded before Texas, because Texas is going to be a long trip. So we want to make sure we had this ready to go beforehand. So current Brandon does not have the results of Texas, but hoping that we did well. We'll find out. Regardless, we're looking at Arifuerta today, because that is coming up here momentarily. We wanted to get a deck out with that you can play and have fun with. This is a variation on the Two Soul choice list that I think is going to be really fun to play around with as the time comes out. With that in mind, let's kind of look at the two combos itself. The Two Soul combo being the crazy combo that does everything you ever wanted to ever, which is the uncancelable bounces back to hand, and that's regardless of whether or not that has the right climax in play. If you have the real climax in play, and you have the drop search in your memory already, it has a crazy number of abilities all at once. You may uncancel, stock charge 2 characters from Waiting Room, look at the top 4 cards, add 1. So a potential plus 2 cards from Waiting Room into stock, so stock charge 2, 1 to hand, and then you bounce this to hand because of the actual thing itself. That's like a plus 4? And then you give your opponent plus 1? And the fact that you could kind of loop this over and over again is fantastic. So definitely stock charging, definitely help get pieces you want ready to go where you need them. Going into level 3, where we have that choice combo at the top, gains power, so it sits at 10 by itself, and has hexproof, has heal, and then with the climax combo itself, pay 1, ditch 1, when you have it in play on attack, to gain the ability when damage dealt is canceled, you may burn 2. And that is the card from this card or the card across from it. So that way, if you cancel damage, you can burn 2. If they cancel damage, you can burn 2. So if there's a climax that gets revealed during damage, burn. Which is really cool, right? Because you can do damage on both your turn and their turn. Ideally, you just want it your turn and then game's over, but you can go both ways and be able to have this unplay, and it's very hard to remove. With that in mind, let's look at the deck overall. Starting off at 0, we have the Kaori, Brainstorm. Pay 1, rest, self-salvage a card, based on the number of climaxes milled. But it also has the ability of pay 2, rest it to heal 1. So you can start healing as early as 0, which is really interesting because you can effectively pair this alongside that level 1 combo a little bit more so. So you could be using that stock charged cards to then turn around and heal. At least you have that option starting at 0. But it's also an important piece for later, which we'll get into when we get there. We also then run this Yue, Kaori, and Miyu card that during your opponent's turn gets 2k power. And is also a runner. It's a mill runner. So you mill a card. If it's a character, you can choose any spot in your opening stage to be able to be a 4k body. So effectively, you can play defense with this card to be able to try to help prevent some soul coming your way early. It also helps keep that card alive a little bit longer, so you could potentially actually use it again on the following turn. It's at least that potential is there. I run as a 2 of because I think it's a fun card. It's also very convenient if you start off with it, but if you don't start off with it, it's fine. It's still not a bad card. The potential plus at 0, I think, is pretty nice. We also run the Shia back row support here. Whenever you trigger a climax, you can ditch a climax in hand, look at top 2, choose 1. That's fine. That's very unlikely to actually ever happen here. You can also pay 2, ditch 1, rest to be able to salvage 2 characters with the same name. So you can potentially loop your level 1 combo that way with this card. If for whatever reason the damage sticks and you don't actually get to bounce your character back to hand, you could potentially pay out to get them back and then do it again. So, pretty useful card here. We also then run 4 of the Salvage Riki Hajime. He also gets power on play, so he sits at 3k on play. But his timing is also enough that you can also do this both on play and on death, so you can kind of choose the timing in which is more appropriate for you, if not both. We also then run 4 of the drop search. We need this in memory, so we're trying to run as many copies of this as possible to get those into memory before our level 1 combo turn. This can also help us get our level 1 combo. But it's a drop search. When it becomes reversed, you have 2 or less in memory, you may send this to memory. Ideally, you want to get it to memory as soon as possible. We also run this Kaori Fuka. When it's sent to Waiting Room, you may ditch a card, and if you do, look at the top 4 cards of your deck and choose a level 1 or higher and add it to hand. So just more mill speed, a little bit more filter, just a little bit more of the things you want from a level 0. We also then run 1 of the climax swap. This allows us to be able to swap into the right climax as needed. It's also a 3k on play. And also when you play this on stage, you can give something 1500 power, so even you can play this in an off lane, play over it, and it still gives an additional bonus to field, despite not being there. Level 1, we just run one profile at 1. It's our level 1 combo, because that's what we want all the time, every day. Level 2 is where things begin to get interesting. Starting off, we have this back row assist UA that gives 2k to level 3s, and then if it's the last card you play on stage at the full field, you may stock charge 1, so effectively making it a free back row assist. We run the 3k memory kick counter to help with that kind of thing as well, so between those 5k in a single lane is actually relatively important here if we actually want to win defensively. We don't want to win defensively with our level 1 combo, but if we want to change things up, we use this 2-1 to then merge into a 3-2. On play, you can shuffle back 2 characters, ideally potentially shuffling back one of the changed targets you want to change into. When you do, you also can minus 1,000 power to one of your opponent's board. And then it also has the fusion itself. This is when you merge with the brainstorm that we were using starting at 0. And you use those 2 cards to then merge underneath the searched card of our level 3 to be placed in that spot. Ideally, you actually want a relatively big board by the time you actually do this, because when you switch in and change in, the card it changes into 10k base. If you have 2 more other characters, gets another 1,000 power. But the important part is if you have another 2 characters on board when you do that fusion, until the end of your opponent's next turn, the character across from it gets minus 2 soul. So it's been a neg soul fusion. So you're able to get this on field at 2 and get neg soul 2 on that first turn as well. If you also have the back row assist in play, all of a sudden you're able to be sitting at 13k with a 3k backup, sitting back up to 16 with a memory kick is actually pretty massive here. So being able to do that relatively efficiently for all just 1 stock, right? You only need to do this for 1 stock to get minus 2 soul at 2 that sits at 13k. Does it take a lot of deck slots to make happen? Yes. But does it take a lot of stock to happen? No. So we can use our stock for other things too. For example, we can use our stock with our level 3 early play. Our other one, we can also early play this 3-2 UA that allows us to be able to marker the salvage Ricky to burn 1. It also gains 500 for each other character, so it sits at about 10-5. So you can actually use this as an attacker too. But you can also just use up our stock buildup that we've been using to just kind of spam loop this with the Hajime Ricky as well to be able to try to get a bunch of burn 1s on your opponent. Because our end game is a pay 1, ditch 1, right? So we're able to refund that pay 1 for every swing that we do. So we only need 7 stock to triple that combo in play. The rest of the stock that we build up, we can use for that early play burn loop. With that in mind, that is the deck itself. The 2 soul into the choice top end. Realistically, slamming 2 soul tries to help speed up the game, so you're not building up as much stock quickly, except for the ability when it cancels. So you're trying to essentially race your opponent to 3 and then say, I have the resources to close and you don't, is effectively what you're trying to do here. Which I think you can do a really decent job at it, because your opponent then has to try to play around this potential burn on the back end of its own attack. So when they're dealing damage, they have to be very careful in how much they actually deal, especially because they likely can't close down too far with their top end, because they just wouldn't have the resources, right? Ideally, you're speeding through the game. So with that in mind, this has been the deck. Next week, we'll have a clock talk talking about how Texas did and all of the other BCS that have gone on so far. But that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, do the YouTube thing. Until next time, have a good one.